Good evening and welcome to another Front Runner podcast here on YouTube. And we've got a few things to discuss tonight. I'm joined by Brian Muffler-King. How are you, Brian?
Hey, Rob, how are you doing? First time maybe you've been part of your setup, eh?
Yeah, we see each other normally in person at games, so it's quite nice to do it this way for a change. And we've got a few things to discuss this evening. Obviously, Molefe Nseke named the Bafana squad last night. And then news in today is that CAS have upheld Kaizer Chiefs' ban. And while we're talking about that, we've also got the Kaizer Chiefs lineups for this evening and a few interesting things happening there as well. So, Brian, but let's start with Bafana. What do you make of the squad? Did you expect the changes that Molefe made?
I mean, if you remember when he announced the squad previously for the matches that South Africa played against Namibia and Zambia, a lot of people were very unhappy with the fact that Mukocho was in there, that Zungu wasn't part of the team. I think the fact that those players are back in the squad, a lot of people will be happier. I believe that, if you look at through the balance of play and what he wants to achieve going forward, I believe it's a well-rounded up squad, so we should be able to do very well with the squad.
It's also interesting. Let's just start with some of the positions and let's talk about one of the more polarizing players on the team. Somebody who's been a hero for many, but at the moment when he got selected, a lot of people were surprised. That's Itumeleng Khune. And then this evening, he's also not in the starting lineup for Kaizer Chiefs.
Let's talk about Itumeleng Khune. I think the coach, when he announced the squad yesterday, made it clear that he needed some experienced players to be part of the squad. And if you look at Itumeleng Khune, he's the most experienced goalkeeper we have in the country at the moment. And I mean, if you look at Ronan Williams, Darren Keat have done very well in the squad. But, sometimes you don't need a player to be able to play. You need him to be part of the squad for him just to really be able to encourage the other players to do well. And I believe that, as a player, Khune has a huge influence in the team dressing room. So you need a senior player like him in the squad. As to whether he can play or not, I'm not too sure, but I believe that you just need his presence in the squad to be able to advise some of the younger players in the squad.
Well, if you look at it, both Ronan Williams and Darren Keat have been backups to Itumeleng over the years. And it is maybe a case of kind of passing the baton on, having him around. Also, the fact is that a lot of the players who are in the Bafana squad haven't necessarily experienced the AFCON qualifiers and things like that. But what does it say again now that he's not in the Chiefs starting lineup? Do you think it should be a prerequisite that players are playing regularly?
I think if you look at the fact that Chiefs has a derby over the weekend against Orlando Pirates, you can't run away from that. You'll see the Pirates lineup tomorrow also. We'll have a lot of changes ahead of the derby over the weekend because as a coach, you know what you need to do. You win a derby, that buys you some time. And also, if you look at the fact that you also have the result coming from CAS, it does bode very well for Chiefs to say, you need to try and use as many of the players that you have around to make sure that, you cover for the likes of Khune, should they not be available, should they get injured. You don't want to throw any player into the deep end and bring them into the fold. You mentioned something very important about most of the players having not played in the qualifiers of the AFCON or even also been part of the AFCON team. So, those players that have been there, your Hlachwayos who have been there already, Andile Jalis, your Tembazwani, Itumeleng Khune, they will come in handy to explain to the players what needs to be done. Khune has been there, has got a baptism of fire when he played against Islanders. You all know what happened in Mauritania. So he will tell them that you cannot come here and be complacent. Let's focus. Let's try and win a game. Let's try and take it one game at a time.
We've also got one or two new faces in the squad. First of all, let's start with the uncapped Rushen Deriuk, PSL's defender of the season. I think a lot of people were surprised that he wasn't part of the friendlies last month or earlier in October. Do you think it's good to see him get a chance now?
It is indeed. He's been one of the most outstanding players. The fact that he even got the defender of the season just shows how he has grown in leaps and bounces as a player. And I believe that if you look at the way the Maritzburg United team is set up, he's a key player in the defense of Maritzburg United. Yes, they didn't do very well in the bubble. They lost their game against Baroka. They lost against Chiefs as well. But he's always been a pillar of strength in the defense of Maritzburg United. And it is very good to see him given a chance into the Bafana fold.
In one of the last podcasts, Visa and I discussed how important or how much we love the left backs over the years. Your David Nyatis, your Jacob Legetos, Bradley Carnell, Tsepo Masilela. And it has been a problem position over the past few years. And now we've got Lyle Lakay being called up. Technically, it's almost like a first cap for him. I think 5 years ago, he played Chan games against Angola, but that's his only international experience. What do you think of the call-up? And I personally think that Lyle could end up cementing his place in the team. He's that type of player and that type of competitor. But what do you make of that call-up?
I believe Lyle Lakay gives you an impetus. When you go forward, the current fullbacks should be able to run on the lines and channels and get whipping the crosses. Lyle Lakay brings you exactly that. In a dead ball situation, he's always going to be the guy to go to for dead ball situation. And the fact that he's coming from a team that just want to travel, you can never overlook that. He's scored some crucial goals for Sundowns. He's been a very competitive player to look at. I believe the left back department is going to be rich in a very short period of time. If you look at the player like Sfiso Ngobeni, he's doing very well at Bloemfontein Celtic. Give him another year or so. He needs to be part of the Fana fold, I believe, in the next matches that are coming up. Maybe even if he doesn't play, but just be part of the squad to understand the philosophy, understand where the team is going. He'll be able to learn a lot and gain a lot of experience from that. If he's sitting in the same team as Tulane Hlatwayo, sitting in the same team as your Itukunes, your Tembazwane, Andile Jalis, your Pesita, who's going overseas already. So you know that he's going to get a huge experience by the time he finishes off.
You kind of touched on the midfield already by mentioning Zungu, Serrero, Mokocho, and of course, Dean Furman also called back. Do you feel sorry for any of the guys who were omitted there? Or do you think they didn't necessarily take their opportunities? It was an unfortunate situation where perhaps we had a winning results against Namibia or Zambia, things might have been different for the four of them, the Mvala, Sitebe, Thabo Nodada, and I'm trying to think there's a fourth one who's missing. But
there was also Chitolo who came on there.
And Gladwin Chitolo. Do you feel sorry for any of those guys, or do you think they didn't necessarily seize their opportunity last time out?
Rob, you need to be very honest. I mean, if you play a friendly game, what you want to see as a coach is to try different combinations. And I think Mulifinseki was very clear on that. Hence, we saw Pete playing his first game in the first match against Namibia. And we had Luther Singh starting in that game, where Luther Singh came in as a sub in the second game against the Zambians. We had a player like Mvala coming in, Mvala starting in that game also. And eventually saw him, Misabicho Notata had 90 minutes in that encounter, Kutumele that run in also. So if you look at those players, some of them did not really left that game having made some crucial mistakes. And that shows that there's still a lot of work to be done for them to grow and be at the level where they can play international football regularly. I mean, the mistake that Novala made when they played against Zambia, the resulting in a goal, we can't overlook that, But the fact that he's at Sundowns, hasn't been able to play at Sundowns yet, how do you call him back into the squad and he's not been able to play in his new team? So that's another problem that you have. Notata is a regular Cape Town TTFC, but you are now thinking, I need to stabilize the middle of the park. I need to bring a player that I know can be able to fight and do very well. Hence, Dean Furman is in the squad. A lot of people are asking that he's playing in a third tier in England. Why is he coming back to South Africa? But you know what Dean Furman can bring you on a field of play. When you need someone who can cover for the likes of Andile Jali, if he needs to be a creative player. Teo Mukwena can bring you something. Zungu is also a capable player. So we have a lot of left-footed players in the middle of the park who will be able to take us forward every now and then. I believe Lyle Lakay, his main role when he gets into the team, won't be to overlap. It will be more to actually cover the back.
And then up front, just the one change, Bradley Grobler in basically for Lyle Foster, who was a late replacement himself. Bradley's been in brilliant form over the past few months and picked up straight away. We need goals. We need people who are scoring goals. As much as Lyle Foster is part of the future, Bradley's the present.
When you look at Bradley Grobler, I believe when Mulifinseki took the squad that played against Namibia and Zambia, he was trying to bring in some new blood into the team. But he already knew his key players for the squad going forward. Hence, Bradley Grobler was not called up for the team because he didn't need a look in. look into, you know. Kemet Erasmus has been away for a while, hence he was brought into the squad to play in the squad that played against Namibia and Zambia. A player like Andile Jali, out injured most of the time, didn't get much game time at Sundowns. You had to bring him in slowly into the team eventually as he played. Serrero doing very well at Al Jazeera also, hence he's part of the squad. So you can see this is the cream of Bafana players. This is where the squad is going to be dominated from. If you want to be part of Bafana, you need to oust any of the players that are there already now for you to be able to make the team. I feel sad for Lyle Foster because I believe he's such a beefy, a good player. You know, PT got injured in the first minute of that game where his first start for South Africa, and, you know, he's not part of the squad now. But, I mean, if you look at him, I believe that there's still a space for him. He can come back and still give us what we need going forward. Luther Singh has proven himself over and over again. So competition is very tight at Bafana level. You know, it's not going to be easy for people just to waltz into the team and waltz out. So you need to work very hard for me to be part of the team.
And let's just wrap up Bafana. It's obviously a tough year. There's no more experimenting. It's unfortunate for a player like Kurt Abrahams, who we never got to see come down because of the COVID-19, and unfortunately he was in quarantine. Are there any players that you think that could still make a push? Someone like Rivaldo Kutsia at Sundowns, obviously been a big part of Bafana, but hasn't been for the past 3 years. Are there any players like that who you think could be knocking on the door?
I believe there's always a place for Rivaldo. If you look at Rivaldo, I still remember in 2013 when Shakes Mashaba first introduced us to Rivaldo Kutsia, he said, this player is versatile. If you need a central defender, he can give you that. If you need a holding midfielder, he can give you that. If you need a player that can be able to cover for the defenders every now and then, he can do exactly that. So I believe there's always one for the future. Hence, he made his debut at a very young age. And eventually you saw him go into the Bafana fold at a young player and then eventually falling out because of the injuries he had. I still believe there's a place for him. You know, there's no way you can never overlook such talent. You know, when Peter brought him to Sundowns, his main thing was to say, I need to release Hlompo. Hlompo is overloaded with work, but with Rivaldo coming to the team, he's going to make sure that we keep shape every now and then when Hlompo goes forward. And hence you saw Hlompo being able to advance more. And hence he scored one of the cracker that he scored against Cape Town CDFC because he was allowed the role to go for it. Doesn't have the engine anymore to run box to box like he used to. But he needed to have cover, and Rivaldo brought that cover. And I believe there's still a space for a player like Rivaldo in Bafana fold. I also believe that, you know, if you look at the Orlando Pirates team, a lot of people are talking about that player. Ben Motswari, I still believe Ben Motswari can still stake a claim in the Bafana fold. A good performing Lodge can still be able to come in and perform well. Memela is proving also that life at Amazulu is not bad for him, you know. And Majori is also raising his hand to say, you know what, I'm not gone. I can still bring something to the team. So there are a lot of players that are raising their hands, but it's just a pity that the coach has to put the team together, prepare for Sao Tome and Principe, and play those 2 matches and prepare for next year when they're going to be taking on the Zambia as well as the Sudan.
And obviously we must remember the under-23s are playing as well. So there are times that the play selections might clash. So there might be young players who might have got an opportunity, but their focus may be on David Notwani's squad.
You can't run away from the Olympics. You know, we all know that you want to make sure that you have a solid squad that can be able to represent the country and get to that level. And the fact that David Notwani is sitting there as a coach, you remember they also gave him a chance where he had a run-in with the Kosafa team, where he was able to give these players a bit of experience, a bit of run-in also. So some of these players that we have in this Bafana fold, we could see them in the Olympic team, you know, if we get to the, you know, so there's still a lot of football to be played. And the fact that one thing that we also tend to forget is that before Bafana played the 2 friendlies against Namibia and Zambia, it had been a year since they last played a game. So there was always going to be some problems when a team start playing together for the first time, especially the number of debutants that were brought into the squad also, and the changes that we made also in the squad, and also new climate, playing without fans. All those new things we also need to, to think about those when we start criticizing the team.
Now we're going to move on to Kaizer Chiefs CAS ban, which has now been upheld. I always try to find a silver lining in every cloud. And while we're talking about the under-23s, Kaizer Chiefs ban might mean that players like Njabulo and Blom, Happy Mashiani, and Gobo, these guys get more game time at Chiefs, which could be good for our Olympic team because we're going to take a few young players with some experience maybe. But from Chiefs' point of view, how difficult is this season going to be?
it's going to be tough. You know, you got to feel for Gavin Hunt. But I think when he went into the team, he knew already the dynamics, he knew the problems that the teams were facing. Hence, if you listen to him in all his interviews, pre-match and post-match, he's been making it clear the fact that he knew coming in here that they might not be able to get the ban overturned, and that he might have to stay with this. And hence, you saw him in the second half against Sundowns. He gave you a glimpse of what Chiefs might look like going forward. You know, with the Sefama, 17-year-old Sefama coming in, Lesato coming into the field of play. You saw him introduce Blom there as a super sub. He brought in also Ngobo playing the whole 90 minutes in that game. So you can see more or less where he's thinking. He's thinking more or less to say, we have these players that have come from a youth ranks that never got a chance to play because the coaches previously always believed in using the tried and tested players. We have a challenge now. Nordkovic is not available, who's been a key player for us, you know. We have those challenges already. We can't sign new players. You wanted Santi into the squad. You can't sign him because the ban is still there. Munari eventually had to leave and go to Paris because they couldn't sign him. Kolam Lambo was one touted. He realized not going to be able to get a deal there. Hence, he had to sign with Amazulu. You know, so if you look at Sassman playing in left back position, Frosler playing in the right back position, Ramatlin Patelo converted to play in a central defense position for Kaizer Chiefs. And then you see there Katande coming in, joining the middle of a park. So all these things, I believe, is a blessing in disguise because you can never have a team of Chiefs caliber unable to promote a lot of young stars. You know, they're forced to do so now. They're forced to bring those players into the fold. It's going to be a long season because they might not get the results they want. They want the trophy drought is there for all to see. They want to get trophies, but they have to try and get those trophies with the young team. And if that is the case, they must just need to support these young players and make them be able to want to get them what they need.
We're both old enough to remember when it actually wasn't uncommon to see a young guy come through at Kaizer Chiefs and having teenagers on the field, especially in the 80s and that. Do you think it could also, that could be a big thing? You know, if you were promoted at a big club, a Pirates, a Sundowns, a Chiefs, it's a big thing for a young player. That jersey, I mean, is very heavy, but if you shine in it, that's a big opportunity.
I mean, if you saw over the weekend, Sifama had a one-on-one chance we could have scored a goal, you know? He can only get those opportunities, he can only get those chances. Now is the time for him to really show exactly what he can do as a player. I've watched these players play at under 20 level, under 17 level. I've traveled with the junior teams, and I know what they can bring into the team. You know, I thought they were going to get T-Baby back from Swallows into the team, and the fact that they left him there, I think maybe they got a different plan. They had a left Chopani. They got a lot of players whom they had to release because they couldn't fill them into the team, couldn't have them playing in a team. I think it's a good time. If you remember the 2001 team of Mushina Chibra, the one that went on to win everything in the country, including the CAF Confederations Cup, that was a young team. You had your Jabulani Masangu, Jabupule then, your Mbutus were all very young teams. So they did well. Kune was fairly a new player into the squad. So if you look at those and remember that it shows that if you have a coach that believes in youngsters, Ajax kept on proving it over and over again. You know, that you can play with the youngsters if they have the right structure. Arthur Zwane has been part of the youth team for a long time, so he knows these players. So he's sitting on the bench with Gavin Hunt. So at least there'll be a lot of insight coming from Arthur Zwane to say, this is where we can slot this player. This is where he's best position when he plays at this position. You know, Dylan Shepard, he has worked with the youth team at Vest, so he understands how to deal with youth players. So I believe that, you know what, as much as everybody can say now, Chiefs are losing out, they won't be able to sign players, there might be problems going forward. I believe it's a blessing in disguise. We've always complained about the so-called big teams not producing enough youngsters in their teams. Now we can actually have youngsters, real youngsters, not a 30-year-old youngster, but a proper youngster in a team.
And how important is the psychological thing going to be? Because let's be frank, they led the squad that Gavin Hunt has inherited, led the league for over a year. They were on the verge of doing it. If you can, you know, they can do it again, surely.
You know, this is where you talk about the experienced players coming to the fore. I still remember the game between Maritzburg United and Kaizer Chiefs, the 1-0 down. That's when you saw what a Parker can do on a day if he's given a chance. A Kama Billiard came to the fore, played 2 assists on the goals that are scored. Yes, in a game against Sundowns, they could have scored early goals easily. They had chances to find the back of the net, couldn't convert their chances. You know, the only thing that you need is to gain confidence. Once these players are confident enough and they realize that, you know, it is us and there's nobody else, and they understand what the badge means, the badge they're wearing, what it means, and understand what it means to be part of this team, they will know, and you'll see exactly what they'll be able to deliver. They'll be able to come out and show that they're not just there just to make up numbers, but they can be able to win things. Imagine this team that you're talking about, the one that played in the second half against Sundowns. Imagine the team playing in a derby, the young players, 17-year-old, 20-year-old, 21-year-old, all playing in a derby against Orlando Pirates and maybe winning and going all the way to the MTN 8. That should be a huge story to say, finally, something we invested our money in is paying dividend.
My final question for you. You've mentioned Dylan Shepherd, you've mentioned Arthur Zwane, you've obviously mentioned Gavin Hunt, but David Milner, Jared Marsh, these are the fitness guys at Kaizer Chiefs. How important are their roles going to be this season, knowing that any serious injuries could be detrimental?
Listen, I mean, Sundowns has proven it. Sundowns, even though they had a big squad, had a lot of players on loan, it was all about the fitness and the people that are supposed to look at regeneration of players. And they needed to make sure the players remain sharp, they remain strong, they remain focused. Those are the players, these are the people we never talk about. We always talk about coaches and how the players are doing well. But Peter brought that to the fore to say, I'm just a coach, but I have a huge team behind me. The fitness guy makes sure these guys are looked after. And I think now they're going to earn their money. They need to be able to get these players up to scratch at a level where they understand that they're no longer paying at MDC level. They're playing at a professional, fully fledged professional level. That lifestyle issues has to come into play. How they train must come into play. Their own program must come into play. So it's a huge ask, but it can be done. And given the sort of team or big team Chiefs is, I believe that can be done.
Well, we're going to start seeing it from in a few minutes. Chiefs up against Chipper. I don't like asking predictions, but our producer has just told me that I should ask you. Any predictions for this evening?
Chipper is a hoodoo team for Chiefs. I know that for a fact. You know, I know that every time they play Chipper, it's always a tricky affair. And the fact that there are no fans, I believe people have been talking and saying that whenever Chiefs, like Pirates and Chiefs, are playing without fans, there's a huge advantage for them. I believe that it works differently. In the Eastern Cape, Chiefs have huge numbers. When they play there, they always excel. So to play in front of an empty stadium in Eastern Cape might be a problem for Kaizer Chiefs. And I believe that also the fact that these young players might have stage fright. Maybe if you look at it in the other way, the flip side, you might say, maybe these players who are fairly young, who are not used to this climate, might be happier playing without fans in the stadium. There won't be anybody booing them. When we want to say every time they don't do well, who's going to jeer them and everything, all of that sort. So I believe that might be a draw today. I'm going to go with a draw for this encounter. I don't see either of the team winnings. I mean, I believe Losiama has got a very formidable team. A draw will be the result that I believe will be fair enough for the two teams today. Because Chiefs will be playing this game with one eye, looking at the derby on the weekend also. But then a Gavin Hunt team, anything is possible with Gavin Hunt. You know, he can inspire a team to do so well in a game. So let's see what happens, because on Saturday it was proven that even he couldn't actually change the team to play in a better way. So let's see what happens with Losiama, a man that you know can defend with his life.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. And thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel.